Hello and welcome back. It's me, Valerie Monroe, and me, Bookwormy. And we're so excited to be here with you today, reading a little bit more of Journey to Nagwanis, which ended very badly yesterday. That's right. Brogden, if you remember, um, was lost his grip when he was up in the willow tree. And the last we saw, he was going down, 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 falling, and we don't know what happened to him. Let's find out. Yes, let's find out. Let's read on. Chapter 2. Brogden accepts an assignment. Brogden awoke in total blackness, which baffled him because it did not feel like nighttime. After a long minute, he realized why it was so dark. He had shut his eyes as he fell from the branch and had not yet opened them. But when he finally did, he saw a beautiful sunset above him, streaky reds, oranges, and pinks underneath smeary black clouds. I bet you've seen a beautiful sunset lately. A baby was crying somewhere nearby, and many things were poking him in the back. He was lying on a huge pile of sticks. He groaned and gingerly lifted himself up. A gnome woman sat next to him, watching his every move. An impossibly tiny baby wailed and squirmed in her arms. "Ooh, thank goodness you're alive," the she-gnome muttered. Brogden's head swiveled from side to side. He realized he was in a large bird's nest. Hundreds of small, fluttery feathers clung to the twigs and branches that surrounded him. There were also bits of string and candy wrappers, and at first he thought it couldn't be true, but it was. Woven through the twigs was Aunt Hazel's scarf. She had left it hanging on a branch last year while gathering butter from a patch of buttercups and assumed that a squirrel had carried it off. "You're in an eagle's nest," the gnome woman said. "You've been unconscious for hours. We've been waiting all day for you to come around." The tiny woman cuddled the baby until its cries softened. Then she turned back to Brogan. "Never in my life did I think someone would drop in the way that you did, plumb out of the sky. The two of us have been huddled up here for days. Luckily, we've got enough food and drink until I can come up with a plan." "A plan?" Brogden repeated foggily. "Well, we sure can't stay here forever," she snorted. "I thought gnomes lived under the hills in Lake Wahakmo," Brogden said. "I've never seen any in trees until now." "Oh, and you won't likely again," she replied. "It's just that we have nowhere else to go." And with that unpleasant admission, she began weeping along with the baby. Minuscule tears rolled down her apple-shaped cheeks, and she wiped them away with the hem of her dress. Brogden knew he was lucky to be alive. So, despite the state he was in, which was lying in an eagle's nest with an ache in almost every part of his body, and having lost all of his willow bark, he felt even sorrier for the gnome woman and her baby than he did for himself. He gestured toward the tiny bundle. "Boy or girl?" "Boy. Looks just like his dad, too. Well, without the beard and all, you know." She gazed wistfully into the distance. "And where is his dad?" asked Brogden, hoping he didn't sound overly nosy. "Gone," the gnome woman said, and Brogden caught a bit of despair in her tone. Her mouth was set in a firm, grim line. "Missing, lost, maybe dead. All I know is that he got a job on the water route a few months back, delivering packages. It would be longer hours for sure and not without risk, but with our little one coming, he said it would be worth the sacrifice. But never did I imagine that this would happen." "What would happen?" asked Brogden. "Well, I shouldn't be telling you this." The woman cocked her head to the side as she thought it over. "Well, what's the use in keeping it close to the vest now? The first day that Finley, that's my husband, was on the new job, he told me he had orders to deliver a package to lowland lakeside in Nagwanis. He would be gone for a few days, a week at the most. Nothing to worry about. He'd be back in time for the birth. And was he? No! Finley never came back. At first it was just a week, and then 2, and next thing I knew, a month had passed. Folks were kind when the little one arrived, of course, but as time dragged on, they became suspicious and began talking amongst themselves. Brogden sat straight up to show he was listening earnestly. What do you mean? Oh, I shouldn't be telling you this. I really should not. The gnome woman shook her head and then continued. Here's the thing. Finley was delivering treasure. He was not supposed to show it to me, you know. Nevertheless, I was endless in my needling and wheedling and convinced him to allow me a moment's peek into the box. Oh, what a treasure it was! Nearly took my breath away, it did. Wait a minute, interrupted Brogden, his eyes glowing with excitement. But don't you want to know what the treasure was? The gnome woman jiggled the wee baby up and down on her knee. I know that I promised Finley I would keep mum, but it makes no difference now. It's gone, and everyone believes Finley stole it anyway. Images flooded Brogden's mind. A swale, roaring water, a sudden spring storm, a gnome in a canoe wedged between 2 rocks, and a box. Now, if you read Down the Swale with us maybe 8-9 weeks ago, you remember that there was a little gnome paddling down the swale, and Brogden tried to help him get unstuck from the rocks. And then this flash flood came in. Do you remember that? And then Brogden got washed down the swale, and then the little gnome also got washed down the swale. And no one had ever heard from him again. But Brogden's starting to remember something about this. I know him, Brogden exclaimed. I knew him. Well, not very well, mind you, for only a few minutes, really, until we were washed down the swale. Who? Whatever are you going on about? Returned the gnome woman. Brogden looked straight into her eyes and said what he probably figured were the best words she had ever heard in months. Your husband, madam. Finley. I believe I know what happened to him. You do? Yes, Brogden replied, and then proceeded to tell her everything. It was not entirely easy for him to remember, because when he too had been washed down the swale, he had blacked out. And there was a period of time that he could not account for, but he was certain of one thing, though. The gnome and his treasure had disappeared down the swale at the same time. Oh, dead then, the gnome woman said, and fresh tears began falling from her tiny eyes. Oh, I knew he'd come to misfortune. And then she explained how she had never been keen on the idea of Finley taking the water route job in the first place. She had tried to persuade him, begged him not to. The increase in wages did not outweigh the danger, she said, but he just wouldn't listen. And now the sad truth remained. Finley was gone, and so was the treasure. Brogden knew it had enormous value. He remembered that Finley had refused to let him come near the box on that fateful day in the swale. Did it contain diamonds, he asked, figuring it didn't matter much anymore. And when she shook her head, he continued guessing. Emeralds? Rubies? Opals? Amethysts? Sapphires? She kept shaking her head, and after naming more than 50 types of gems and minerals, Brogden ran out of ideas. Perhaps it was because she had been without the company or conversation of friends and family for months. Perhaps it was out of gratitude for the small spark of hope that Finley was still alive. Whatever the reason, in the end, the gnome woman decided that it did not matter if she revealed the contents of the treasure box. So she's going to tell him. She and Brogden were kindred spirits in a nest high in a willow tree. Amber, she confided in a hushed whisper as the baby dropped off into a gentle snore. The amber rose. The amber rose, Brogden echoed. He had heard of amber. It was the sticky substance that dripped down the sides of trees in prehistoric times. Aunt Hazel had told him that some unfortunate insects had gotten themselves stuck in amber millions of years ago and were immortalized, frozen in time. However, he had never heard of the amber rose. What is it? He asked. Ah, the amber rose, the gnome woman began. It actually is a real rose, captured in amber. A tiny rose, mind you, with perfectly formed petals. Amazingly, even after all these years, the red has not faded from the bloom. Finley and I gazed at it together that night before he left. Oh, how I wish I had the means to give it to you, Finley had said to me. I told him that was silly talk. We could never afford a bauble like that. Very few folks can, which is why it sat in the vault for years. All the priceless treasures do, you know, she confided until. Until what? Said Brogden. Well, until some gnome amasses enough gold through inheritance or gifts, or, well, that's pretty much the only way to accrue a stockpile of gold. It can take years, and most of the gold remains in the same families anyway. If you have enough, then you can make a bid for one of the vault's treasures at the open auction. It's held once every 10 years. And did someone bid on the amber rose? Well, the advertisement for the auction was delivered almost a year in advance to gnomes in Lake Wahakmo, Necessa Lake, and the Lake of the Cranberries. Wheeling and dealing took place all year long. Exchanges of property, pawning of family heirlooms, anything to lay their hands on gold. Bids were sealed and placed in the velvet box, which is only opened under the strictest supervision of the trustees of the vault. Brogden listened in amazement. He had no inkling that there were such elaborate goings-on in the lives of gnomes. The Gnome Collective's vault holds many priceless treasures, the gnome woman went on, but for some reason, the only one the folks were interested in last year was the amber rose. Everyone thought the oldest Tinkwicket boy was a shoo-in. He had somehow managed to persuade just about every one of his family members to contribute to his bid in exchange for promises of labor for the rest of his life. He planned to give the amber rose to his betrothed, the infamously lovely Zanissa. Her family has enough wealth to buy it themselves, by the way, but they prefer to invest in real estate. The woman said this in a whisper, as if imparting a great secret. Everyone was shocked when Umbus of Nagwanis cast the winning bid. He lives miles away, and it was hard to believe that he had trusted the delivery service with his payment. Sure enough, his pile of gold ensured that the amber rose was his. It was boxed up, insured, and placed into Finley's hands for delivery. I'm sorry to tell you this, then, Brogden began, but the amber rose is most likely lost in the swale near my home or sitting at the bottom of Lake Wahakmo. Last time I saw it, the waters were washing it away. I myself was only saved from drowning on that day by landing in a drain pipe. But you were saved, the gnome woman pointed out. Aye, that's a fact, Brogden agreed. A true miracle. Well, then, maybe my Finley is alive, too, and maybe the amber rose is not lost, she mused optimistically. I suppose it's possible, Brogden nodded. Oh, to see my Finley again, she cried, and to find the amber rose. Oh, Umbus was furious when it was not delivered, and all the gnomes of Nagwanis denounced our community. Cut off all ties. No more trade. No more festivals. Our family name is ruined. However, if what you're saying is true, things can be set straight. As long as a glimmer of hope remains, you must search for Finley. Me, Brogden exclaimed. Why me? Well, I can't travel with a babe in my arms, can I? She asked. No, It's up to you. She looked at him squarely. You must find the Amber Rose and bring Finley home. I must? A final tear broke free from one eye and rolled down her cheek. Yes, please. Brogden felt the last of his resistance slide away. Okay, he said with a nod. I will try. And that's where we'll stop for today. Wow, do you know what this means? It means that Brogden is going on another adventure. I sure hope he finds that gnome. And I hope he finds that treasure. An amber rose sounds very cool. Well, the only way to know if he finds the treasure, if he locates Finley, that gnome, is to tune in tomorrow. Please come back tomorrow and read with us. Bye, everybody.